Thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to our host, moderator for today, Mallory Pickering with the Illinois Stewardship Alliance. Again, welcome everyone, and we'll leave a little bit of room at the end for Q&A and also a poll, but we'll go ahead and hand it off to Molly.
Thank you, Roger, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all today, to see you all today, and to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is local food policy. So my name is Molly Pickering. I am the Policy Director for Illinois Stewardship Alliance, and I'll be your moderator today. For just a little background on the Alliance, we are a statewide nonprofit organization bringing farmers and eaters together to solve problems in the food system, and often that is through policy. We work to build deep relationships with farmers to understand the challenges they face and bring them together to develop solutions. And then we work with both farmers and eaters, which is all of us, people who care about local food and care about food in general and like to eat. We bring with both those groups together to build advocacy and leadership skills to bring those solutions to life. So we encourage our members to buy local as much as they can, whenever they can. But our members also understand that we cannot buy our way out of a broken food system. We have to use our voices collectively to change the underlying policies that root this food system in place. So we are here today with an amazing panelists and partner organizations because we want to make it easier for you to use your voice too. So during today's session, we hope to, one, help you understand the most important food and farm legislation that's being introduced this year. And two, make it easy for you to make an impact by giving you all the resources you need to get involved and take action. So with that, I'm just going to do a little housekeeping here. So we will be able to take questions from the audience through the chat today. So please write your questions in the chat, and my colleague Liz Rupel, who is working behind the scenes, will try to answer some questions there, but we'll also have time at the end for our panelists to address a few questions as well. Roger mentioned we'll have 10 or 15 minutes here at the end, so we'll try to also take those questions from the chat and bring them to the end. I think that's it. So without further ado, I've already introduced myself and told you a little bit about Illinois Stewardship Alliance. So now I'd like to introduce you to our amazing partners and lawmakers who are leading the way for food and farm policy. And first up, we have Kiara Jackson, the Executive Director of Illinois Food Justice Alliance. Kiara, can you tell us more about the Food Justice Alliance and your mission?
Yes, hi everyone. As Molly said, Kiera Jackson, the Illinois Food Justice Alliance. We are an intergenerational, multi-sectorial, and statewide coalition here in Illinois that's fighting to transform the food system like we all are. And we do that through policy, advocacy, organizing, and narrative storytelling work.
Thanks, Kiara. Next, we have Chad Wallace with the Illinois Environmental Council. Chad, can you tell us more about IEC and your role there?
Yeah, thanks, Molly. I'm Chad Wallace. I am Rural Affairs Director for the Illinois Environmental Council. We advocate for healthy environmental issues for Illinois. Have over 130 affiliates that we work with to organize and bring voice to the folks in Illinois.
Thank you, Chad. Chad is also our board president of Illinois Stewardship Alliance and a farmer himself. So like all great change makers, he's wearing a lot of hats and bringing a lot of different perspective to his food system policy work. So thanks, Chad. Next, we have Claire Shipp with American Farmland Trust. Claire, can you tell us about AFT and your role there?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you all. My name is Claire, and I'm the Midwest Policy Manager for American Farmland Trust. AFT was founded in 1980 as the first and still only national agricultural land trust. So our mission is to save the land that sustains us, and we do that through research, program, and policy work that supports farmland protection, land access, farm viability, anything that helps keep farmers on the land and be successful in producing our food and fiber nationally, and I do our state policy work to try to make that happen.
Thanks for being here, Claire. Last, but certainly not least, we have State Rep Sonia Harper, who is also chair of the House Agriculture Committee. Rep Harper, can you tell us a little bit about your role as the chairperson for the House Ag Committee for folks who might not know what that means? And then maybe you could also share what brought you into policy and specifically agriculture policy.
Yes, thank you so much, Molly. And thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm Sonia Harper. I'm the state representative for the 6th District. My district is entirely in Chicago. And yes, I do chair the Agriculture and Conservation Committee, where I am blessed to work with all of you on everything as it relates to increasing healthy, affordable food and food deserts, to improving our local food infrastructure, to fighting for farmer equity, and everything else related. So I'm happy to be here on the panel with you guys today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rep. Harper. Rep. Harper, we ended with you, but we're gonna start with you first to talk about the policies that you're working on. So our
Sure.
farmer members have told us that one of the main things they want to work on is addressing issues of equity in the food system. And we know that some communities are at a disadvantage because of historical and ongoing discrimination, financial disinvestment, and cultural or language barriers. You have been leading the way with legislation to address these issues. So this year, you're championing the Emerging Farmer Grant Program and the Local Food Infrastructure Grant Program. I want to start first with the Emerging Farmer Grant Program, HB 4922. Can you tell us what this bill does and why it's needed?
Absolutely. I would love to tell you about the bill does and why it's needed. But if you allow me a little grace, I'd love to talk about how we even got there.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
when people are looking at the policies that we're talking about today, whether they're emerging farmer grants, infrastructure or tax incentives, they didn't just appear out of nowhere. And we have been working together for years now. So I'm going to tell you about how we got there. Before I ever joined the General Assembly, I was a journalist and a community organizer on the South Side. I also worked on an urban farm called Growing Home down the street from my house, and later started Grow Greater Inglewood, a nonprofit focused on building out urban agriculture districts in my community. And so our work was about helping farmers access land, training new growers, and educating residents about healthy eating and wellness. And so for me, this work is deeply personal. I've lost my entire household to illnesses connected to living in a food desert. So when I talk about these things, I'm not just talking about campaign promises. It's not just a talking point for me. It's not a grant application. This is my life, right? And because of those experiences, when I came into the General Assembly, I immediately started working on legislation to address food access, to address supporting farmers, and that no one really else at the time was doing, even when I begged them to. But nevertheless, over the years, we have passed policies that have helped to lay the groundwork for what we're discussing today. That includes the Farmer Equity Act, the creation of the Illinois Agriculture Equity Commission, the Urban Agriculture Incentive Zones Act, and even the Right to Garden Act, as well as legislation to track and map food deserts, and even the Healthy Food Access Program. And so each one of those bills addressed different problems, different parts of the same problem that I wanted to address. But I really do think that my legislative track record and the work that we're doing together tells the stories of our inequities in food access, as well as the public health consequences of those inequities and our responsibilities as policymakers and advocates to do something about them. But I want to be honest about something. For a long time, I was working on these issues almost completely alone in the legislature. When I first started talking about socially disadvantaged farmers, Black farmers in Illinois, urban agriculture, food deserts being a public health crisis, some people didn't even believe those problems existed. You've heard this before. I had colleagues who laughed when I talked about food deserts in Chicago. I had others who dismissed urban agriculture as just people gardening in their backyards. And many of them genuinely believed that there were no Black farmers in Illinois at all. And in 2021, I spent months fighting a bill from NICOR that would have allowed natural gas pipelines to run through Pembroke Township, a rural Black farming community that my family is from, once considered the largest Black farming community north of the Mason-Dixon line. Well, the Black farmers and landowners there have been fighting pipeline encroachment for generations. So I worked my tail off, and many others did, trying to stop the bill in the General Assembly. And for a while, we held it back. But eventually, the company made a backroom deal with leadership, and the bill passed anyway. And suddenly, that pipeline was about to cut right through the land, that Black families had fought to hold on to for generations. And so I'll be honest, that moment was very devastating. But it also made something very, very clear to me. And that is, if the people making these decisions never see the farmers whose lives they are affecting, they will continue to make bad decisions. So I told myself that would never happen again. And this reality is actually what led to the creation of the Black Farmers and Growers Lobby Day, because I said I wanted to bring the farmers to Springfield. And so, very quickly in wrapping up, I brought together partners like the Illinois Stewardship Alliance, like Grow Greater Inglewood, like Black Oak Center, like the State Innovation Exchange, and so many other organizations, local farms and gardens. And we started planning our first ever Black Farmers and Growers Lobby Day. Now, since we've been doing this Lobby Day and amplifying the voices of Black farmers and all socially disadvantaged farmers, I want to put an emphasis on that. Together, we have helped to reallocate every year the $2.5 million in the state budget for grants to socially disadvantaged farmers, which I want to say was originally introduced again in the budget in 2021 by the Black Caucus as a part of their 4-pillar agenda to attack systemic racism in Illinois. And so now we call this emerging farmers funding and have provided specific instructions for the state to deploy these funds, since they have expressed confusion over how to get the money out over the past 5 years. So that is what the emerging farmers funding is about. And so we've also helped to pass the local food infrastructure grant program, as well as key elements of the farmer restoration program. And I really want to talk about a lot of our partners and people who are part of this fight. And many of you probably in the audience are now sitting as commissioners on the Illinois Agriculture Equity Commission, which was also passed into law the same time as that socially disadvantaged farmer funding. So here we are today, once again, fighting for those socially disadvantaged funds, now rebranded as emerging farmer funding. And we shall see what happens this year, right?
Thank you, Rep. Harper. So I want to just go back and put a finer point on what you were saying. So the emerging farmer grant program, there's been funding allocated in the state budget for the last, since 2021, but that funding has never been dispersed. That program has never gotten off the ground because of partially is what we understand from the state is that there has never been a bill passed to direct the state how to use the funding.
Yeah, and I like that. That is not a good excuse either, because immediately upon passing these funds, I was in meetings with them about us dispersing it. So back then there was no question about, oh, we don't know how to get them out. What they wanted to do at the time was give it off to another organization or another university to do it, and they couldn't find one. So their reasons for not implementing it has changed over the years. They come up with a new reason why it isn't being implemented every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this bill here, this is trying to hold their feet to the fire to try to say, this is absolutely how this program is going to work and how these grants, this is going to get distributed. So this is an attempt for you and for all of our members to work together to hold the state's feet to the fire to get this funding out. So it's really important for us to get this bill across the finish line this year so that this funding can finally get dispersed and start helping socially disadvantaged farmers and farmers working in food deserts. Okay. All right. So I want to make that point clear to folks. So we already talked about why now? Why is this bill important to this year? Is there opposition to the bill? And if so, what is it? And what would you say to those opposed?
Is there opposition to the current bill? So the one that we have now, the new version, I don't know of any opposition, besides the usual opposition that comes from the departments, which is the usual opposition that comes from all departments, in that they like things just the way they are. They don't want to take on any extra workload. They claim they don't have the capacity or the people or the manpower to administer these grants. So what it sounds like is our state departments aren't set up to deliver true equity. Our state departments aren't set up to help with local food infrastructure. And so maybe that's where our attention needs to be. Yes, I want to continue to propose these bills and programs, but perhaps we need to talk about proposing new structure in these departments so that they're able to take on new roles. Instead of kicking the can down the road and saying, oh, I don't want to deal with it, let's give it to another agency.
Yeah.
What agency is best to help emerging farmers and food access but the Department of Agriculture? And if the Department of Agriculture isn't willing to do it, then who is? And if that really is the case, then I think that this is a conversation that we need to have with the governor.
Yeah. Wonderful. There's definitely some bigger issues to tackle here. So we're looking forward to working with you more on those issues and getting more people in this room involved and working on those issues as well, Rep. Harper. So let's see. I have one more question for you on this bill. Okay, so so can you tell us we talked a little bit about, it's called the Emerging Farmer Grant Program, but can you talk a little bit about exactly, what it would do? What would this grant funding help
Absolutely.
a farmer achieve?
Yeah, let me get my notes here. So again, if we haven't already clarified, this legislation establishes specific instructions, a grant program to deploy the 2.5 million in previously appropriated but unexpended funds intended to support emerging and socially disadvantaged farmers in Illinois. So it would provide grants for farm infrastructure, equipment, operations, and market access, helping farmers increase production and bring more Illinois-grown food to market. As we know, emerging farmers face barriers to capital and infrastructure. Many farmers cannot access equipment, storage, or distribution systems. Our small farms, they struggle to connect to institutional and wholesale markets. And of course, our farmers of color and urban farmers face historic inequities in land and capital access. And so this bill just helps to ensure that those funds are actually deployed to the farmers who need them. So folks can use these funds for a host of reasons like farm infrastructure, equipment, operation items, market access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Great. Thank you, Rep. Harper.
Yeah.
And what can folks do to get involved and support this bill?
Yes, well, hopefully we get our bills. It was 2.5 million, not a B. But if we can have a conversation, but hey, the reason why I'm going so hard on the 2.5 million, I'm glad you brought that up, is because it was part of a package that was 2.5 billion with a B. And that was totally ignored. So I'm really trying to just, keep it non-controversial and just say, hey, give me the 2.5 million, because I really could complain about the entire 2.5 billion with the B that we were owed that year from the budget that has never come through. And so I'm sorry, I just saw that come up on my screen and I just had to address it. But what was your original question, Molly? How can folks help us get involved?
How do people get involved?
Yeah. You can help us by sharing these messages that I'm sharing with you, which are legislators, and with telling them what our years-long struggle has been to deploy these funds. It isn't that hard. I put many names on a line item and the money just went right out the door. What was it so special about these that they couldn't go right out the door? And the same things that I put in the bill was the same conversations that I've had with all of the administrators and people who had the power to push this, grant program forward. So reach out to the leadership, reach out to the Department of Agriculture, let the governor know how important this is that this is passed. When the bill is finally moved from rules, hopefully if it is moved to a committee, sign on as in support, right? Go in and file a witness slip as support and follow any other call to actions that we may put out there regarding this bill and others. And yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you just mentioned a bunch of things people can do. I want to encourage folks, if you want to stay involved with tracking this bill and supporting this bill, please sign up for the Illinois Stewardship Alliance newsletter. We're going to be keeping you as up to date as possible and making sure that you have opportunity to take really easy action, to contact your lawmaker. We'll send you action alerts. All you have to do is, push a button, send an email. It's going to send a note to your lawmaker saying you support this. We'll tell you when it's in committee, and you can file a witness slip. We'll help you do those things. So sign up for our newsletter. We'll keep you involved. And then, Rep. Harper, you also mentioned, I don't want to forget this, because you also mentioned Black Farmer Lobby Day. Can you tell folks when that's coming up?
Black Farmer Lobby Day is where we come down to speak up for equity in agriculture for all socially disadvantaged farmers in the food, farm, and cannabis industries. So we are calling all food people, all eaters, all advocates, our farmers, our gardeners, all those care about creating healthy local food systems in Illinois to join us on May 6th at the Illinois State Capitol from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for Lobby Day. Registration is currently out, and you can sign up. And even if you want to be part of the meeting or planning process, or help us to lead certain groups, or help to lead on certain bills, we can definitely use your help.
Okay, awesome. And Liz Rupel, I think we'll try to pull that link to sign up and put that in the chat. If not, we'll send it out to folks after this panel. Okay, before we end, Rep. Harper, you've given so much time here already, but I wanted to just end real quick on the Local Food Infrastructure Grant Program, another really important grant program. And it is actually open right now. The Department of Agriculture is accepting applications for this right now. Can you just tell folks a little bit about what that is and what it does?
Sure. So our local food infrastructure grant program, it invests in the physical infrastructure needed to move local food from farms to market. So this program supports cold storage facilities, food hubs and aggregation centers, processing facilities, transportation and distribution systems, and overall equipment that connects farmers to markets. Without this infrastructure, farmers can grow food, but they can't scale production or reach larger buyers. And so we really, 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 really need this, because Illinois, we produce large amounts of agricultural commodities here, but we lack the sufficient infrastructure for local food production. So when we're talking about localizing our food shed, programs like LFIG are definitely needed, that and a whole lot more.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, Liz Rupel will hopefully drop the link in the chat. So if you're interested in applying, you can apply for that. The deadline, I believe, is March 18th, so it's coming up. But there is 2 years of grant funding available right now. So there's I think there's it's like 3.6 billion or million available. I wish it was billion. There's 3.6 million available for this type of infrastructure that Rep. Harper just talked about. So please apply. And the more applications we get in, the better case we can also make to the state that this is needed. So we are advocating again for $2 million for the state to keep this program running. Thank you, Rep. Harper. Are there any other important policies that you want folks to know about this year?
Oh man, I would say just go on to ilga.gov and take a look. I've also got some other bills out there. Farm Down Payment Assistance Program, the Fall Cover Crop Savings Program, working on a bill with charitable food systems, working with Stewardship Alliance on making some changes to the Illinois Grocery Initiative to expand it to online markets. So yeah, we are doing a lot that we hope to get passed.
Awesome. You're always staying busy. Thank you, Rep. Harper. Chad, you're up next. Chad, we've been working with the Environmental Council since forever on issues of water quality, soil health, and climate. You all have really been champions for centering farmers as a solution to climate change and making sure that farmers have all the tools and resources they need to protect Illinois soil and water quality. Can you tell us more about the agrivoltaics legislation you've introduced this year?
Yeah, thank you, Molly. It's basically an agrivoltaics definition. It's House Bill 4830 and Senate Bill 2958. Basically, this bill establishes a clear and durable definition of agrivoltaics in Illinois law that will help us ensure kind of consistency across the future of the agrivoltaics. And also help with guiding future policy.
Chad, can I take you a step back for one big leap backwards? Can you tell us what agrivoltaics means?
Yes, agrivoltaics, it is new terminology. Majority of folks haven't heard of it. It is the combining of solar fields, solar panel fields, and either livestock grazing or growing crops between and underneath the panels of those facilities.
Okay. So why do we need a definition for agrivoltaics?
Well, definitely, like I said, it is at the very beginning. There were quite a few working groups around Illinois that were having conversations, and I think it became apparent that a clear definition to align those conversations and make to ensure progress. And it's since it is brand new, the best thing to start with is a definition to get folks on board.
Yeah, and why do we need agrivoltaics in Illinois? Like, why does it matter to farmers or to eaters to have a thriving agrivoltaic system here?
Well, there is some, in my opinion, some controversy around the solar fields. Not everybody is for solar fields on prime growing land in Illinois. This allows for many things to take place, but it does allow for folks to come in and graze some sheep. I think that's the majority of the agrivoltaics projects right now. But the future of agrivoltaics is extremely exciting. A lot of the things that a lot of us on this call work with are land access, growing more food closer to the table it's eaten at, new programs that enable more people of all groups to grow. It's just kind of endless of the possibilities. But with the future of the solar industry in Illinois, we're talking massive acres. So the amount of potential new land available for new projects is very encouraging.
So you're saying that this will help ensure that land isn't fully taken out of production, that farmers can still use the land even if it's got a solar field on it, and they could use it for sheep grazing, vegetable crop production, et cetera. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. Dual
Okay,
purpose.
great. So why do we need this bill now?
Well, it's at the beginning, and a definition bill at the beginning of all the work just is common sense. I think there'll be a lot of discussions in the future as far as future programs and stuff like that. But as I stated at the beginning, everybody aligned with the same thought process. That's why it's important to have that here in the beginning.
Yeah, is there any opposition or, I mean, is there anybody who's opposed to this bill or what does this bill not do? How would you combat any opposition arguments?
There has been some opposition, primarily around language of how the definition is written. Um, ourselves, other including AFT, American Farmland Trust, have been having a lot of conversations on how to make sure that the language used is appropriate for everyone and is ensures the success for the future of the programs.
Okay. What will it mean for our audience members today if this bill is passed?
I think that it will help guarantee that agrivoltaics projects are done properly. Everybody's aligned, and hopefully, it allows the agrivoltaics movement to progress quickly and start, bringing those effects we need for land access and specialty crops grown for the future.
Great. What can the audience do to support this bill?
I am not sure. We are, like I said, it's just a simple definition bill. So we are in the process of trying to get it passed, of course. So if agrivoltaics is important to you, if there are solar fields that you think are coming up in your area, and you would like not just to have a solar field there, you would like, maybe a new farmer or an existing farmer that's trying to expand and grow more food for Illinois, I would urge you to support it.
Does IEC have a newsletter list they can join? Are you doing lobby days? Is there ways people can get involved?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Um, we're currently just working with legislators. I would suggest if you had any questions or would like to become involved, American Farmland Trust is lead on this. We are working with them on this, but I would suggest they reach out to American Farmland Trust.
Okay, well, that's great because we're going to talk to American Farmland Trust next. Thank you, Chad. Claire, you're fairly new to the AFT team, but Illinois is so lucky to have you. You're in a regional position, which means you not only look at policy in Illinois, but in other states. So you're able to help folks here in Illinois think about what other states are doing to tackle food and farm issues and how we could be doing, sort of similar work here in Illinois. So this year, American Farmland Trust introduced the Farmer Tax Benefit Act, HB 4849, championed by Representative Guzzardi. Can you tell us more about what this bill does and why it's needed?
Yeah, thanks, Molly. And I feel really grateful that even though I'm in a regional position, I'm based in Champaign, Illinois. So I get to be here, and this is my home now with all of you wonderful folks. So the Farmer Tax Benefit Act it would create a voluntary state income tax credit for land protection. And that includes both farmland protection and natural land protection. And when I say land protection, I mean conservation easements, agricultural conservation easements, which put a restriction on land so that that farm can never be developed never be paved over, never be developed, and can continue in agricultural production forever, permanently. And that is a tool that AFT has worked on for ages. When I introduced myself, I mentioned that AFT is the first and still only National Agricultural Land Trust. And at our origins, we were protecting farmland through agricultural conservation easements. So helping farmers realize the development value of their land, and keep that land in production forever, in the specific situations where they want to. And so that's and it's a tax policy, so it's a little bit nitty gritty, but on the high level, this bill would allow Illinois to protect more open space, both farmland and natural land, by increasing the capacity of land trusts who are currently protecting land in Illinois, but are restricted by the amount of funds they have available to do that work, as many of us are in our own nonprofit spaces. It would add another tool in the toolbox for Illinois landowners. So it would allow farmers to protect their land if that's something that they want to pursue, to preserve the legacy and the financial, emotional, spiritual investment they've made into their land through conservation practices and other things. And it would also importantly allow Illinois to capture federal match funds that we're currently missing out on. The federal government has lots of tax credits and grant programs that provide funding for land protection. And Colorado, which has a similar program to what Farmer Tax Benefit Act is proposing, is bringing in more than $56 million in federal funding for farmland protection. Comparatively, Illinois is capturing 430,000. And that's just not acceptable. I can go into all the reasons why this is important, but leaving money on the table at a time like this is just not acceptable. And this bill would allow us to capture a lot more funding for our state to protect our valuable natural resources.
Okay, can I have you explain it to me like I'm 5, Claire? What is a conservation easement?
That's a great and large question. So an agricultural conservation easement puts a permanent restriction on the land it's placed on, so that land can never be paved over or developed. It has to be used for a specific purpose. So for an agricultural conservation easement, if you put that on a farm, all of the land in that farm has to stay in agricultural production forever, and it can never be bought by a developer to pave it over and create a warehouse, a data center, whatever else they're proposing. And that allows the farmer or landowner receives a benefit from placing the conservation easement on their land. Basically, they receive the difference in value between the development value of the property, so whatever the data center would come pay the farmer for the land, and so it's that minus the agricultural value of the land. So it allows them to liquidize that development right up front so they can reinvest that money into their operation. And that value is different depending on where the land is, how much development pressure there is, all of those things. And it can be a really great tool for farmers to both protect the legacy of their farm and get some money to retire or pass the farm on to the next generation, or buy new equipment that they need to implement conservation practices, et cetera, et cetera. And it's important, especially in peri-urban and suburban areas where development pressure is increasing and there's a lot of suburban sprawl, to ensure that around those urban centers that Illinois has, we have farmland to continue producing local foods to feed the communities that we care about. Sorry if that's,
Great.
and we have a fact sheet on which I can send in the
Yeah.
chat after this about ag easements. It's a very complicated legal tool, but the gist is that it protects farmland in perpetuity and gives some farmers some money so that they can reinvest in their farm, transfer it on to the next generation, and protect their legacy and the soils on their farm.
There we go. Thank you, Claire, for that. And so why now? Why is this bill important right now?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this, but in Illinois, we're paving over lots of land, farmland and natural land. Illinois paves over 48 acres of farmland every single day, and AFT's research shows that Illinois is projected to lose 363,000 acres of farmland before 2040. And that represents, just to put it in context, that's 2.5 times the size of Chicago. So that's like putting two and a half Chicago's in Illinois over farmland. And that's 1,600 farms and $218 million in farm output. And at the same time, a big part of this bill as well is protecting natural lands and our open spaces. And Illinois ranks 48th nationally in natural land protection. We're second from last.
Oh, my goodness.
And only 4% of our land is protected, and we're the prairie state. So, yeah, I mean, this bill is critical. Land trusts are struggling to protect land because they don't have enough funding to do it. We all know economy is tight. And so if we want to advance this work in land protection at the speed and strategy needed to be successful in securing our natural resources and our open space, we have to have the state investment to do it.
Thank you, Claire, for painting that visual picture of, the land loss, the two Chicagos. That really helps to help visualize the issue here. What can the audience do to support this bill?
Yeah, so I have a little paragraph drafted to send in the chat, but this is, just to be clear, this is work that has existed long before I moved to Illinois, moved back to the Midwest. It's been a 10-year effort, more than 10-year effort to try to get investment in land protection in Illinois. So we are just doing some rebranding. The Farmer Tax Benefit Act is a new name for the bill to address some opposition that's come up, and so there's that. But we have a petition. So huge thing would be to click on the link I just sent in the chat, sign the petition. In Wisconsin, we did this work and we got over 400 signatures. Right now, the last time I checked yesterday, we were at like 29 or something.
Okay.
We cannot be losing to Colorado, Wisconsin, and all of these other places. Please sign the petition if this is something you care about, because we want to demonstrate constituent support to lawmakers. The group of folks working on this and caring about it have been branded the ACRE Coalition, which is the Alliance for Conserving Rural and Natural Environments. It's an informal coalition to gather people together who care about this work. If you want regular updates about how to stay engaged, I encourage you to fill out the form that I've linked there. And then I've also shared the fact sheet so you can learn more about the details of the bill and the benefits. And I'd ask you to share that fact sheet with legislators and also your networks. If you're going to conferences like this one or others, please print it out and share it with folks who might be interested in this work. And finally, yeah, any chance you get to call your elected officials, tell them you care about this bill. We'd appreciate it. It'll be in the House Revenue Committee, so any support we can get from those members would be wonderful.
That is a great list of things for people to do and take action. So thank you for that, Claire. And so as Chad mentioned, they can also sort of join your newsletter list to get updates on the agrivoltaics bill as well. Is that correct?
So yeah, the
Okay.
acre group is very specific to land protection, but you're welcome. I dropped my email in the chat and we'll do again. You're welcome to reach out to me directly if you want to stay up to date on agrivoltaics work. That's a much more new initiative, and so we're still gathering the folks to lead that
Sure.
work. So you can just reach out to me directly.
Sure. And before we move on, you mentioned that there is some opposition to the bill. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think historically the opposition to this bill has been because conservation easements are a complicated and confusing technical legal tool to explain, and there's just some misunderstanding around what they do. So, some things you might hear is that land protection allows the government to take control of private land, take over management of land. That's not true. People who put conservation easements on their land retain full ownership of their land. They can pass it on to the next generation. They can sell it to a younger beginning farmer or really whoever they want. They just can't sell it for development. It has to maintain an agricultural production. And another thing we've heard a lot is that this money will be used to protect large corporate farms that are only doing corn soy rotations. That is not true. There has to be an entity who holds and agrees to an easement that gets put on a farm, and a lot of that work is done based on values and missions of nonprofits like I'm sure many of you work for. And so generally this money will be used to protect farms, especially in peri-urban, suburban areas that are small, diversified farms who have invested a lot in their operation and their soils to preserve that legacy. It's a very values-based, legacy-based decision. And this bill does not force any landowners into land protection agreements. It's not the right solution for every landowner, but it's a wonderful solution for the right landowners. And we're not creating any mandates, just trying to put another tool in the toolbox for farmers who, yeah, want to preserve their legacy for future generations.
Awesome. So everybody go fill out that petition right now. Thank you,
Please.
Thank you so much, Claire. All right, Kiara, our members have told us that they want to see the state of Illinois care about and invest in local food, and the good food purchasing policy is one way to do that. Can you tell us more about why Illinois needs a good food purchasing policy and what it does?
Yes. Okay, so I'll talk about what the Good Food Purchasing Policy slash program does and what it is. It creates a value-based metric and flexible framework for public food purchasing institutions so that they are able to buy food in ways that advance clear community outcomes and not just always going with the lowest bidder slash the lowest cost. It aligns procurement with five core values, and these are a part of the Good Food Purchasing Program. So that's local and community economies, environmental sustainability, worker well-being, animal welfare, and nutrition and community health. And it also builds a practical pathway so that institutions are able to achieve measurable action and continuous improvement over time. It increases transparency and accountability so that public agencies and the public understand where taxpayer dollars are going and also who's supplying the food and how the suppliers are actually performing against those five values. And then ultimately, we want to see the power of procurement to be able to create a transparent and equitable food system that prioritizes, excuse me, the health and well-being of people, animals, and also the environment.
Can you tell me what's the problem with our current procurement system?
Well, a lot of the time, so the default procurement system is called IFB, which is invitation for bids, also known as the lowest bidder. So that means that literally when a agency submits a solicitation that says we want X amount of food, and then suppliers will go to that charge and say, okay, I think I'm able to meet the needs of this agency. The only requirements for a supplier to meet those needs is if they are responsible and responsive. That's pretty vague, and it's also a very low bar for suppliers to be able to meet. And whatever supplier comes in as the lowest bid and they are responsible and responsive, they are able to receive that contract with the agency that submitted the solicitation. So it does not look at their current OSHA violations. It doesn't look at any labor violations, that they may have, any environmental harm that they may be doing. It looks at nothing of that sort. So typically, entities that are able to come in as the lowest bidder are typically corporations, and a lot of them are outside of Illinois. And again, that's a lot of them are able, a lot of our food system is consolidated and monopolized by huge corporations that are not paying attention and are not abiding by environmental sustainability or even fair labor standards. So that's a huge piece of the problem with our food system.
Okay, so Illinois buys a lot of food because our schools buy food, our institutions buy food, our prisons buy food, our veterans homes buy food. Those are all sort of supported with state funding. If those sort of, do you have like a sense of sort of how much money we could be shifting towards local food if we had a good food purchasing policy?
I don't have the exact dollar amount, but hundreds of millions of dollars would be able to be shifted towards values-based purchasing if we were able to have the good food purchasing program.
Okay, great. So instead of, hundreds of millions of dollars going to corporations most often outside of our state, we'd be reinvesting hundreds of millions of dollars with local farms and food businesses that are hopefully raising, things according to regenerative practices, using fair labor standards, et cetera, and reinvesting in those types of businesses here in Illinois. That sounds like
Exactly.
that sounds like a really big deal. So what is the opposition here?
So a lot of our opposition typically is in the hands of agencies and institutions. I think a lot of the times when they hear values-based purchasing, it goes back to a lot of what Rep. Harper was saying around a lot of institutions like to keep the status quo. If you think about it on a very like baseline level, there are coalitions or organizations that are advocating for something that is completely different from their standard way of practice. And a lot of times they think that this will increase their workload. They don't have the capacity or the infrastructure or the resources to be able to do this type of purchasing. And even though they do some type of values-based purchasing already in their procurement systems, it is quite limited in how much they're able to do due to different external factors. And so a lot of the times we do hear that it would be a resource and infrastructural issue if they were able to do more values-based purchasing.
What can the audience do to get involved and support a good food purchasing policy campaign? I know you're not introducing a bill this year. You're sort of working to build the campaign in hopes of introducing something very strong next year. Can you tell us what does that look like and how do people get involved in that?
Yeah, so this year in 2026, we're working a lot to build our relationships with different stakeholders, primarily institutions and agencies, so that we're continuing to socialize the Good Food Purchasing Program, what it is, and that it's not this scary thing that will have mandates and that will penalize institutions and other agencies, but more of like, we want to introduce a framework that will literally be able to circulate dollars back into our communities and then also help to hopefully shrink the supply chain so that more of our supply chains start and end in Illinois. And as we've seen during like the pandemic, our supply chains are quite fragile and they extend most of the time outside of Illinois. So we want to figure out ways in which we can help support Illinois to be more self-sufficient because we have the power and the resources and quite frankly, the capacity to be able to help Illinois become self-sufficient. So we want to work towards that. So in 2026, building a lot of relationships. And then our goal is that towards the end of the year, we will have worked with enough stakeholders, gotten enough buy-in that we're able to create different bills that we will be able to introduce in 2027. So some of those bills that we're thinking about is like a pilot program. So wanting to do a lot of baby steps with this work. It is a huge undertaking to tell any agency, let alone agencies within a governmental level. So for us, we're trying to integrate values-based purchasing on the state level. So it is a huge undertaking to say, hey, we want to reframe the way that you do purchasing um, over time and also all at once. And so we have to be considerate of what that feels like and what that looks like from their perspective. And so we want to do a lot of baby stepping. So what that means is we're thinking about doing a pilot program. So we want to be able to create that in law with stakeholders, not just agencies and institutions, but also suppliers, such as like local, small, mid-size, and BIPOC farmers in Illinois. And then in 2027, be able to introduce that pilot program and then be able to start supporting and leading the implementation work around it so that hopefully within a couple of years' time, we can say, here is a proof of concept on the state level. We already have proof of concepts already on the Cook County level and the city of Chicago level back in 2017 and in 2018. Both Cook County and the city of Chicago adopted the GFPP resolutions. And then over 70 institutions across the US have already adopted GFPP. So there is already a proof of concept. There just isn't a proof of concept on the state level. So we're hoping by doing a pilot program, we'll be able to say, here's a proof of concept on the state level. Here are the tweaks that we've learned about over time. And this is how we've decided to like work around them to have it to be more smooth sailing so that as more state agencies are able to integrate values-based purchasing, they have a reference to look at.
Very smart.
And the way that, the way that they, the audience can get involved, I'll drop a link to our listserv. And it's where you'll be updated on, especially like in 2027, around calls to actions, witness slips, advocacy days, and also a lot of the work that our coalition members are doing. We have 29 coalition members across the state. Some are, and also some are national. So you'll also be able to be clued in on what they're doing as well. And I'll drop that in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kiara. Okay, so we talked a little bit just now about what's coming down the pipe for 2027 with the good food purchasing policy, but I want to open the floor back up to the rest of our panelists to sort of ask the same question. What's coming down the pike for next year? What kind of legislation can folks perhaps expect to see? And I'll just let any of the panelists jump in.
I don't want to take up too much space, but I just wanted to highlight that one of the issues that's on my mind the most and keeps me up at night is land access for young and beginning farmers and historically marginalized farmers. And I can't point you to an exact bill that will be coming down the pike next spring, but I think it's something that Representative Harper has done an incredible job of leading on and something that we need to continue talking about because I think it's the biggest, personally, I feel it's the biggest issue facing agriculture for the next many years. And I know AFT has led a lot of work on, well, we did a lot of research on land access policy incentives, which we call LAPIs, and I can drop the link to that research in the chat. The researcher who led that work is now on board with AFT as our Farms for a New Generation director. And so we're hoping to continue working with Stewardship Alliance and all the other wonderful people on this call to figure out what solutions work for Illinois specifically, because we've got to come up with something to make sure folks can access farmland and affordably and be successful once they do.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire. Yes, we're excited to work with you this coming summer on land access solutions and see if we can get something, that people agree to and that it's going to work for Illinois in this next legislative session. Chad or Rep. Harper, anything coming up for you? Doesn't have to be a bill, issues.
No, I wanted to piggyback off what Claire said, and I would love to work with you offline because, we've had several instances in the past where we were trying to address the very issue that you said, land access for emerging and socially disadvantaged farmers. I do have a couple of bills out there that I got again from my friends in Minnesota that I feel does get to those issues. However, again, I think that where we have to be creative in is coming up with our own infrastructure to flow those funds because obviously, well, our main state agency doesn't want to do it. So I think that we can do it. We just have to structure it the right way in in collaboration with them. And so I do look forward to working with you on that. Again, some of the other things that I got going is also beginner farmer support funding, grocery online markets expansion, HB 4721, HB 5300, the Food Desert Economic Development Zones, House Bill 5235, Food Systems Coordination Act, House Bill 3433, the Flood Risk Reduction Pilot Program. And I have a cool resolution, I think, House Resolution 667, that talks about urban rural food partnerships and strengthening the collaboration between urban and rural producers. And I think that some of that collaboration can even be around land, as we see some people are retiring out, but some people needing access, and what types of links or even tax incentives that we can create to merge the two. So thanks.
Thank you, Rep. Harper. Chad, anything coming down the pipe?
I would just mention groundwater concerns. Our rural communities have a lot of concerns about the available water that they have in their wells. I know that with data centers taking center stage here in Illinois, and the vast amount of water that it takes to operate those, that's something that I think a lot of folks should be looking at and planning for the future.
Great. Thank you, Chad. I know a couple other things that Illinois Stewardship Alliance members are working on, so I'll just bring them up here as well. We're looking at soil health. What can we do to move the needle for water quality and soil health? What can we do to help farmers implement conservation practices on their land? So I know members will be working on that. We've already brought up land access. Cottage food and health department regulations are going to be a big one for next year. So if folks on this call are interested in sort of tackling those issues, if you are a farmer or a cottage food baker and you're coming up against issues with health department regulations, we'll be working on that. Pesticide drift is another big one. So I'm trying to prevent pesticide drift on small farms. Because commodity agriculture and local food production, they have to exist side by side in Illinois, but we have to figure out how, commodity agriculture, pesticides don't harm our small farms, but that commodity agriculture can exist too. So we got to figure out a solution that, works for everybody on that. We'll be looking at that next year as well. And then big one for the city of Chicago, I think, water rights and zoning for urban agriculture. I know there's been a lot of issues that have come up around that. So our members will be sort of exploring those issues as well. I know we are at 12:48 now, so I want to make sure we leave some time for questions here at the end for our panelists. So Roger, is now the time to open the floor to questions?
Yeah, let's do it through the chat. If people have any direct questions, let's put them in the chat, and we'll have about 5-7 minutes. So maybe a couple questions total.
I'm trying to look through all the chat.
I think for the most part, we've been pretty on. So thank you, everybody, for monitoring the chat. I think we've been on top of answering, but if you did not have one of your questions answered, please feel free to add that back to the stack.
So seeing Rebecca's question, assuming you mean the change in what they're spending on, not the actual amount of money being spent.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like what's been the change in the money being spent? I'm wondering if there's been a significant increase or yeah.
So so the amount of money hasn't necessarily changed significantly because the bulk of funding that goes to video. Um, the amount of money that's spent generally is focused on the amount of money is set usually by the number of folks who are in any of the settings. So schools, Department of Aging, parks. So the amount is kind of per person, not necessarily the amount spent on per meal. And so that, I think chiming in as potential policy down the road is programs that are incentive funds that the state could run, like the state of Michigan ran, it was called a 10 cent a meal program. So if a certain percentage of Michigan grown produce or foods or meats were served within a school meal program, they would get an extra 10 cent a meal, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering CP, Chicago Public Schools, is working with under $2 a lunch, it really does give a lot, and especially when buying it bulk, gives a lot more flexibility. So that is something I think down the road in the next couple of years, the state of Illinois could be looking at as well to allow for really trying to purchase locally, but also higher quality food that could be served in these contexts too.
So I'm sorry if I may follow up on that. I'm trying to wrap my head around this better. Is there not necessarily an increase that comes at all in spending with adopting the because
No, so a lot of the work that happens is starting to pay attention to what's being served. So menus get shifted. Can
yeah.
be that can be like, okay, what's available now? What are some of the vendors that we haven't looked at before who could grow or sell products that match that menu item? Some of it's they've never looked at their value chain for seeing if there's labor violations. So could they shift from one meat processor or packer who has a ton of OSHA violations that would shift to another vendor who doesn't have those, for example. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen behind the scenes before prices can be increased over
I
time.
see a couple other questions in the chat. One is curious about how panelists see policy as a tool for better connecting and bridging gaps between rural and urban communities in our food shed. Love to chat about this offline too. Yeah, that's a great question, Charlotte. Turn it over to the panelists. Well, I'll go ahead and answer while we're waiting for some of the panelists to think about that too. At Illinois Stewardship Alliance, this comes up a lot. We work with folks across the state. So we're working in both the rural areas and in the urban areas. And so bringing those folks together in the same room is when we find out that there are common issues that we can be working on together. So I really see that as a place where some of those divisions are, we're finding commonality. But the other thing I would say is it's, one of the things I think that is common is that folks try to bring legislators out to farms urban legislators out to farms in downstate to see how they work. I think the reverse can also happen. Let's get our downstate legislators up to these urban farms in Chicago. So we can be doing both of those things. And I think that that helps also bridge those divides when people are actually on farms. They have a better understanding of the real impact and livelihoods of the people that are, operating those farms, as Rep. Harper sort of started this conversation with.
Yeah. You said, I definitely see policy that it can be a tool for better connecting for the reasons that Molly stated. A lot of times when I do, because I am the ag chair, I'm going all across the state. And folks be surprised to know, especially when I then invite them to my community, that we, especially in our disinvested urban communities, right, our food desert communities, we share the same. When I say we share the same exact issues, and so why not organize power and policy around those issues, especially like as it relates to food, because food is nonpartisan and everyone needs to eat. And so as I'm looking at my resolution here that I hope that I be able to pass, it simply resolves that we urge state agencies and governments, educational institutions, community-based organizations, farmers and workers, to connect our disproportionately impacted urban communities and rural communities through equitable food system, through workforce development, through local economic investment, that we encourage education, outreach, and technical assistance that promote agricultural literacy, food system careers, entrepreneurship, cross-regional understanding with particular attention to these areas, and that we support policy frameworks that strengthen local and regional food infrastructure, protect farmland, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm hoping that this resolution, if we can pass it, it can start to lay the groundwork for putting some of those partnerships in place. And I know that we, even on the ground, have even already started some of those partnerships. So, yeah.
All right, I know we're coming to the end of our time here, so I want to wrap up by thanking all of our Rockstar panelists for being here today, and thank you all to all the attendees who are here today. Really appreciate you being here and taking time to learn about these important policies. To stay up to date on these important bills, you can join the Illinois Stewardship Alliance newsletter. We'll also serve as sort of a clearinghouse for a lot of these bills. We'll keep you up to date on them. So your voice really does make a difference, and I hope you'll consider taking the leap to advocate for these policies and the things you care about, and also come join us with Rep. Harper on Black Farmer Lobby Day in May.
Great. Well, thank you all. Please give appreciations through emojis and chat to all of our speakers today for them to share all their hard work and the leadership of Rep. Harper and our other advocates who are grinding it out in the mean hallways of the Capitol and Springfield. Very appreciative of all your time and energy and passion. Remember, if you're in Illinois, vote next week. You got an important primary to participate in, which helps drive a lot of what's possible in Springfield based on who we're sending to represent us in those spaces. I'm going to be sharing a brief poll just to get folks' take on, and we always absorb this feedback for planning for next year. We have also 4 sessions coming up at 2 o'clock. Some are following up on some of the conversations we've just had. One is focused on urban indigenous food systems. Another's on cooperatively owned grocery stores. Another is advancing good food purchasing. So within Cook County, so a follow-up on the good food purchasing work, particularly in carceral situations. So changes that have happened, improvements in the jail and juvenile detention center. And then ecological community accountability session. And then at 3:45, we'll have integrating staple crops for community power, a community cookbook, lessons learned by the Inglewood Food Sovereignty Network. Again, building off of the legacy of Rep. Harper's work there, fighting for fair food service. So really looking at how to shift food dollars away from kind of food service management companies and back into community. And then lessons on urban farming crisis. So excited for all of the rest of the day. And I will launch this poll. And then please, if just take a second to give feedback as we're wrapping up for the session. And again, thanks everyone. Very excited for the rest of the day and appreciative of all your time and energy. Thanks so much, Molly and team.
Thanks for putting this together.
All right, and we'll see everyone back at 2.
Thank you, Roger.
All right, thanks, Molly.
All right,
Thanks,
have a great day.
Roger.
Good luck with the rest of the sessions.
Thank you. All right, good
Thanks,
luck at
Kathleen.
Capitol today.
Thanks.
Good to see you, Kathleen.
Thanks for the support behind the scenes, Liz.
Yeah, just a little boop, boop, boop. Happy to help. All
All
right.
right.
Take
Talk to you
care,
guys
everybody.
soon.
Good luck. Great sessions. Such an awesome event this week. See ya.
All right, bye-bye, guys.
Roger, would you like me to stay on for the next session or onto Zoom, or do you want me to come back?
I would say come back since it's a bit of a gap.
That sounds good. See you later,
Yep.
Roger.
All right, thank you so much.
Alrighty. I'll see you later, Roger. Thank you so much for your support today. See you guys throughout the calls. Oh,
All right. Bye.
bye.